Hey minasan!
Hey minasan!
Konnichiwa. Today on makusayalostinworld, we just finished Marvel Studios' Hawkeye season finale. Did Hawkeye's first solo outing end on a good note? Let's find out. Let's go!
今日はホークアイシリーズの最終話についてレビューしていくんですけど、いつも通りまずはポジティブから始めたいと思います。So, what was the first positive?
So it's gotta be Wilson Fisk, aka the Kingpin.
Yes.
So Wilson Fisk appears straight out of the gate in this episode, right at the beginning. So there's a bombshell that's revealed as Eleanor Bishop was actually working for the Kingpin all this time. And Eleanor Bishop was actually the one that hired Yelena to kill Hawkeye. Back to the Kingpin, he basically looked and sounded exactly the same way that audiences fell in love with him in the Daredevil series. So that was very, very nice to see for me.
前のエピソード5では、ウィルソン・フィスクは彼自身の登場はなくて、彼のレコーディングだけだったんですけど、この最終話ではもう最初からウィルソン・フィスク自身が出てきたので、それには私もびっくりしてすごいいいサプライズでした。私はやっぱりウィルソン・フィスクがこのホークアイシリーズにいるっていう噂があったので期待をしてたんですけど、期待してた通り出てきてくれてよかったです。私にとってはいいサプライズでした。あと、この最初のエピソード、最初からケイトのママがウィルソン・フィスクの下で働いていたっていうすごいビッグな事実最初の方で公開されたので、その最初からのこの最終話のスタートは良かったです。
Yeah, it was really, really nice to see such a beloved Marvel character back in the fold. And I'm so happy that they got Vincent D'Onofrio back. He was actually in this episode quite a lot, which was nice to see. He actually got a lot of screen time.
Yeah.
So it was great to finally have Wilson Fisk's official introduction into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, especially just after Matt Murdock made his first official MCU appearance in Spider-Man No Way Home.
Yeah, that's right.
So I'm looking forward to seeing if they cross paths in the near future.
Me too.
The next positive for me focused on the story now. So this episode was essentially the culmination of all the events that happened before. For me, it was a very good conclusion of the main protagonists, Clint and Kate's storylines. It wrapped it up very well. Spoiler alert, in the end, Kate is actually responsible for the arrest of Eleanor Bishop.
That was surprising.
Yeah, it was really surprising because it happened on Christmas. Eleanor Bishop basically said, "Is this what heroes do? Get their mothers arrested on Christmas?" And it was kind of a heartbreaking moment for Kate. But it was really nice to see that Clint took in Kate Bishop. We don't know if it's just for Christmas. It looks like, to me, that Kate Bishop will be staying with Clint and Clint's family for the foreseeable future, as Clint brought Pizza Dog and Kate Bishop with him back home to his family to spend the holidays. So it was very, very nice to see that.
ストーリーはやっぱり最終話なのもあってすごい良かったです。で、いろんなストーリーにちゃんと終局があるのも良かったなと思いました。クリントとイエレーナのところでも終局があって、でこのいろいろ起こってたケイト・ビショップとクリント側にも終局があって、ケイトのママのところでも終局があってっていうところでちゃんとストーリーがちゃんと終わってたのは良かったなと思ったし、前のエピソードまで私はジャックが悪者かと思ってたんですけど、この最終話でジャックはケイトとかと一緒に戦ってたので、ジャック実はいい人でしたっていうのがit was really nice to see.
Yeah, Jack ended up being kind of a comedic character in the end. Yeah, I really wasn't expecting that. I was fully expecting Jack to be a full-on villain, but in the end, he was totally not that. So that was a surprise.
この最終話まで全然気づきませんでした、それには。
Another character that I thought got a good conclusion to their story arc was Yelena Belova. So she appeared in this episode again. Cool as always, charismatic, great scenes, great exchange again with Kate Bishop, and essentially her sole purpose of this episode was to find Clint and finish the job of killing Clint. And when she finally finds Clint and is about to kill him, there's a scene where Yelena and Clint have this exchange about Natasha, and Yelena is basically asking Clint about the events that led up right before Natasha's death, and Clint's telling the truth, saying that she made the decision to sacrifice herself, and Yelena didn't believe him and proceeded to beat him over and over with her baton. And then, all of a sudden, Clint whistles the tune that Natasha used to whistle to Yelena when they were kids. And all of a sudden, you see Yelena get emotional. This is the turning point when she starts to believe that Clint and Natasha were very close best friends, that Clint would never ever do anything to hurt Natasha. So, very nice to see this conclusion. Yelena then spares Clint and then leaves. So, where will she turn up next? Who knows, but very, very excited to see more of Yelena Belova.
イエレーナはやっぱりこのエピソードでもかっこよかったですね。結局イエレーナはクリントを殺さない決断をするんですけど、さっき言ったようにもこのクリントとイエレーナの間でこの最終話ではようやくお互いに終局がついたのは良かったなと思いました。で、そのイエレーナとクリントがナターシャについて話しているシーンがあって、そこでは2人ともナターシャのことがすごい恋しいんだなっていうのが伝わってくるようなシーンでした。
But last but not least, next positive for me is the action in this episode. So for me, the action in this episode felt closer to what we would see in a feature film from Marvel Studios. With a few exceptions, some of the choreography still felt a little bit cheap and Netflix-ish. But for the most part, especially with the trick arrows and again with Yelena and her choreography and some of the fight scenes as well. For example, Kate and Clint utilizing all of their trick arrows against the tracksuit mafia, and also in particular the fight scene where Kate fights none other than the Kingpin, who was done actually really, really well. He seemed really physically intimidating, maybe even more physically intimidating than we've ever seen him, even compared to the Daredevil series.
でこの最終話のアクションもやっぱりすごい良かったんですけど、個人的に私が好きだったアクションシーンはケイトとクリントがトリックアローをトラックスーツマフィアに向かってこうやって撃ってた時でしたでこのトリックアローはすごい強そうに見えました。もうなんかトラックスーツマフィアをやっつけるっていうよりかトラックスーツマフィアを殺していくみたいな感じぐらいの強いトリックアローでそこはびっくりしました
Yeah, that's true.
で、私が面白いと思ったトリックアローはアントマンのテクノロジーを使ったトリックアロー、ケイトがこの一つの矢を撃った時にトラックがガーってきたんですよ。で矢がトラックに刺さってトラックがすごいちっこくなってで中のトラックスーツマフィアまでちっこくなってそれはすごい面白かったですまあなのでこのトリックエローのシーンはすごい面白くて好きでした
Yeah, very かっこいい。Those trick arrows, very, very cool.
それでは次にネガティブに入っていきたいと思います。
My first positive was Wilson Fisk, and my first negative is also going to be Wilson Fisk as well. So, one thing about him, the way he was utilized in this episode, I wish he was introduced a little bit earlier. So we got a little bit of extra characterization. Maybe it's because I remember of how great a job the Daredevil showrunners did with his character and building up his character, that I wanted to actually see a little bit of this in this episode. But he was more or less utilized almost like a plot device in this episode. And for me, that was a little bit of a letdown due to what I'm used to with the Daredevil series. So without the characterization, it almost feels like he's a generic villain, which he absolutely is not. By the end of season 3 of Daredevil, you felt the gravity of how dangerous a crime boss this really is. And it was done also in a very psychological way as well, not just physical. Whereas here, again, due to the lack of characterization, it seems that Marvel Studios used Wilson Fisk's physicality instead of his actual characterization to build up how intimidating he was as this top crime boss. And damn, he was physical. He almost seemed damn near invincible in this episode. He was run over by a car by Eleanor Bishop. He was shot with arrows. And in the end scene as well, with Echo, he was also shot. Or it seems that he was shot. It was actually off camera.
So we don't know.
We don't know. But I'm praying to God, and I assume that he didn't get killed, and I prayed to God that he didn't get killed because he's such a great character. But if Marvel Studios is only using him for that, then it's a big failure in my eyes. But I think that he'll be back in a future chapter of the MCU.
Yeah, hopefully.
He still has to meet Daredevil. He still has to meet up with Matt Murdock. So we'll see what the future holds for Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin.
この最終話ではウィルソン・フィスク結構たくさんカメラにいたんですけど、私はやっぱりもうちょっと早めからウィルソン・フィスクを紹介してほしかったです。ウサクマックが言った通り、デアデビルで感じた彼のなんていうか怖さっていうか彼の威嚇的さがこのシリーズではあんまり感じられなかった。ウィルソン・フィスクとっても強かったんですけど、もうちょっと時間をかけて彼を紹介してほしかったなと思いました。そして最後にマヤとのシーンでガンが放たれた音がするんですけど、画面ではウィルソン・フィスクが殺されたというシーンが映されてなかったので、私はそれはガンは放たれたけどマヤもウィルソン・フィスクもどっちも死ななかったんじゃないかなというのを予想をしています。私もこれから先のマーベルのシリーズとか映画でウィルソン・フィスクをまた見たいので、彼が殺されていないことを願っておきます。
Alright, and the last thing I'll say about anything negative from this episode, I'll end it with Clint's costume. So, the LARPers actually assisted in creating these costumes for both Kate and Clint. And on Kate, it actually looks pretty decent, I will say. But I don't know if it's Clint's actual physical form, but it didn't look too great on him. It looked cheap and spandexy, and we've seen cooler costumes on him before in previous Avengers movies. And by far his coolest costume, the Ronin costume, which in my opinion should be his permanent costume, and he should take up the persona over Hawkeye. But unfortunately, Kate and Clint ended up burning the costume, so that was a very sad moment for me. It seems like Clint and Kate will be a team moving forward in this series, so I hope that Clint gets another upgrade in his costume, because this LARP costume isn't doing it for me, unfortunately.
ケイトとクリントがロニンのコスチュームを燃やしちゃったのは私にとってはすごい残念でした。クリントがロニンだったのはクリントがすごい暗いところにいた時だったんですけど、でも個人的にロニンのコスチュームとこのなんていうの伸び縮みできるソードはすごいかっこいいので、それを私はもうちょっとロニンのスーツを着たクリントを見たかったです。それでは今からバーディクトに入っていきたいと思います。
So, for me, I'll keep mine short. Overall, this episode gets a thumbs up. The season finale, I really enjoyed it. Aside from the negatives that I mentioned, the series actually consistently got better as it went along. And again, I was very satisfied with the conclusions of the main protagonists, both Clint and Kate. And I was very satisfied with Yelena's story arc, how it concluded. Now just waiting on the other characters' futures in the MCU, such as Echo. We know she's getting her own Disney Plus series, so to tell you the truth, I wasn't super interested in her character in this series. So I'm interested to see if she gets more interesting as we delve deeper into her character in her own solo series. And of course, Wilson Fisk the Kingpin. If they killed him off here, shame on Marvel, but I honestly believe that they didn't. So looking forward to seeing him again. In conclusion, for me, the series ended up being pretty good in my opinion after a little bit of a shaky start, with the season finale being the best entry in the series for me. So
私もこのシリーズはかなり楽しんだので、良かったです。ストーリーもアクションもエピソードが進むにつれてストーリーもアクションもだんだん良くなってる感じがして、だんだん面白くなっていって、そこはすごい良かったなと思いました。私の全体的な感想はすごいポジティブな感じです。で、またハーカイのシリーズにはいろんなキャラクターが出てきたんですけど、そのいろんなキャラクターのその後 が楽しみです。クリントとケイトのこの先を見るのも楽しみですし、新しい前のシリーズも楽しみで、もうちょっとそこで前について掘り下げていけたらなと思ってます。あとウィルソン・フィスク、もし殺されていなかったらこの先のウィルソン・フィスクのストーリーも楽しみなので、この全員のキャラクターのこの先が楽しみです。それでは私たちのレビューは以上になります。私たちはとてもこのシリーズハーカイを楽しみました。皆さんはどうでしたか？ぜひ感想をコメントで教えてください。このレビューを見てくれてありがとうございました。皆さんがこのレビューを楽しんだら、ぜひこの動画にLIKEとチャンネル登録をよろしくお願いします。それではまた次の動画でお会いしましょう。Make today magical and
Have a marvelous day. ありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました。
And see you guys in the next video.
Bye!
Peace.